All right, so today we're going to dive into the architectural story of a city you might not know, but you definitely should. Esbjerg in Denmark. And look, this is not your typical story of ancient kings and medieval walls. Nope, this is a story written in brick and steel, and it's all shaped by the raw power of the North Sea.
So let me ask you a question. When you think of great European architecture, what pops into your head? I'm willing to bet it's something like, winding cobblestone streets, maybe some huge cathedrals, ancient castles, right? It's a classic, powerful image. But here's the thing. The city we're exploring today, it has almost none of that. And yet, its buildings tell one of the clearest, most compelling stories you'll ever find.
So you can kind of see the difference right here. On one side, you've got your typical old city, right? Tangled streets that grew up totally organically over hundreds and hundreds of years. And then, you've got Esbjerg. Instead of those medieval streets, you get a modern grid. Instead of a castle on a hill, you get a massive industrial port. This wasn't a city that grew over centuries. It was planned from scratch, born out of pure necessity. Its DNA is just completely different.
Okay, so how does a city like this even happen? How does it just appear? Well, that brings us to our first section. This was a city built on purpose. I mean, this was no accident of history. It was a deliberate, calculated act of national survival.
The whole story really kicks off with a national crisis. We're talking 1864. Denmark loses a pretty devastating war against Prussia and Austria. And with that loss, they had to give up some crucial territory, which included their most important harbors on the North Sea. And just like that, poof, the nation's entire agricultural export industry was cut off. A total disaster.
So the solution had to be something radical. The government realized they couldn't just sit around and wait for a city to grow naturally. No way. They had to build one, and they had to do it fast. So they scouted the spot on the west coast that was, well, pretty much nothing, just empty sandy fields. It was a true blank canvas, perfect for a city designed around one single urgent purpose, building a new port. And that sense of urgent purpose, it defined everything, absolutely everything that came next. You can literally see how that purpose was translated into the city's DNA through what we're going to call the language of brick. The thinking behind this whole plan was just incredibly logical and really modern for its time. It was a simple three-step process. Step 1, identify the need. Okay, we need a new port for the whole nation. Check. Step 2, design for efficiency. That meant a grid of straight streets, no messing around. And step 3, build for function. Use simple, strong, honest materials that just get the job done. And you can see exactly how that played out in the actual buildings. The main material they used? Humble red brick. The style? Simple and strong. I mean, it had to be, to stand up to that harsh coastal weather. The focus was 100% on function. We're talking warehouses, fish plants, shipyards, and just rows and rows of practical, no-frills homes for the thousands of workers who were flooding into this new city.
So what this really means is that Esbjerg's early architecture wasn't some kind of artistic statement. It was architecture born from pure necessity. Every single roofline, every wall, every street, it was all dictated by the needs of the harbor and the relentless demands of the sea.
But, as the city grew, something started to shift. And the water tower, built back in 1897, was a huge moment. Sure, it was functional. It had to supply clean water, obviously. But it was also a symbol. It just stood there, towering over the flat landscape, like this proud declaration that Esbjerg wasn't just a worksite anymore. It was becoming a real city.
And from there, the city just kept evolving. It started to mirror all the massive technological and social shifts of the 20th century. And this brought on what you could call a few distinct waves of modern change.
So this timeline gives you a really quick, rapid-fire look at how these global architectural styles just washed over Esbjerg, one after another. You have the clean, optimistic lines of 1930s functionalism, then the harsh reality of wartime concrete in the 40s, and then the super forward-looking vision of post-war modernism in the 1960s. Let's talk about functionalism first. This style was all about clean lines, flat roofs, and basically zero unnecessary decoration. It was a totally natural fit for a city that was already built on pure practicality, right? It just gave Esbjerg's new apartment blocks and public buildings this feeling of sleek, modern optimism.
But then came a much darker chapter. During the German occupation in World War II, a totally new kind of architecture popped up along the coast. These heavy, brutal concrete bunkers. I mean, these things weren't built for living or working. They were an architecture of pure survival and fear. And a lot of them are still standing there today, like these silent witnesses to that time.
After the war, though, that spirit of progress came roaring back. Post-war modernism fully embraced new materials like concrete and steel. The idea was to build for a future that everyone imagined would be full of amazing technology and progress. And you can see that style all over the schools, offices, and housing blocks of what was, by then, a rapidly expanding city. Okay, but what happens when the very industry that created your city starts to fade away? That's a huge challenge, and it led Esbjerg into its next phase, reinventing the industrial heart.
9 meters. Just think about that. That's nearly 30 feet tall. Keep that number on your head for a second.
Because that is the height of each of these 4 colossal white figures. This is the Men at Sea Monument. It was unveiled in 1995. And okay, it's not technically a building, but it plays this absolutely crucial architectural role. It totally redefined the skyline and created this powerful new symbol, connecting the city's identity right back to the people and the ocean that made it all possible in the first place.
And this sculpture really arrived at a critical time. See, as the old fishing and shipping industries were declining, Esbjerg was facing this huge question. What in the world do you do with all the massive empty warehouses, factories, and shipyards that make up the city's historic core?
Well, the city's answer was a really clever strategy called adaptive reuse. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's so powerful. Instead of just demolishing your past, you honor it by giving those old buildings a brand new life.
And just look at how this works in the real world. An old fish processing plant, it becomes a state-of-the-art concert hall. A giant cavernous warehouse, it gets transformed into a modern museum. A former shipyard is now innovative office space. You see, the city's industrial bones are still there. You can feel them. But now they're housing culture and art and brand new ideas.
So when you look at Esbjerg's entire journey, I mean, from an empty beach to a modern energy hub, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's that architecture is a story.
What this city teaches us is that great architecture isn't just about how old something is. It's about its purpose. It's about the story that a building tells. Esbjerg's value isn't found in ancient stones. It's found in the raw honesty of its brick factories, the forward-looking optimism of its modernist apartments, and the sheer intelligence of its reused industrial spaces.
And you know, in the end, every city has a story like this. It's a story that isn't written in books, but in its walls. So the next time you're walking down your own street, maybe look a little closer. What story do the buildings in your city tell?